April is Financial Literacy Month. What do you need to know to make sure you've got a successful retirement? Stay tuned for this episode.
Welcome to Retirees Radio, your one-stop shop for retirement planning. Tune in and get ready to take control of your retirement future.
Welcome into Retirees Radio. I'm Ben George with Victor Medina. As always, there's a lot to love about April, Victor. I know the spring, the flowers, there's a lot going on, but I know for you especially, I'm sure you're pretty fond of Financial Literacy Month.
Yeah, it's a big thing, right? I mean, how can a financial advisor, people do retirement planning, not like celebrate the fact that April is Financial Literacy Month? I mean, the whole office is in a party mode for the entire month. This is what we live for.
Balloon celebration, the whole nine yards, right? Well, it's important for our discussion too, right? Because I think kind of setting the stage we're going to discuss today, of course, we're going to talk about some things, but provide some clarity, some education, some information along the way. But I think to kind of start things off, the big picture here, literacy plays a big role in, I guess, retirement, how successful you are in retirement, how happy you are in retirement, correct?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think that a lot of people kind of go through increasing their financial literacy over the course of their lifetime, and they almost have to restart that process, Ben, when they get into retirement, because not only do we have like terms that are new, but the whole idea about what saving and investing looks like is actually modulated a little bit. Because while you're working, you're kind of in that phase of accumulation. But when you make the decision to retire, as you're approaching thinking about retirement, your investing strategy takes on a brand new light. And so I think that, the concept of literacy is really important to kind of be in that student's mindset. Know that going into the shift into retirement, that you're going to need to learn new things, or at least approach things a little bit differently. And we've seen a lot in the course of the career of working with different retirees, is that we're introducing them to new concepts, new ideas, whether we want to call that literacy about the definition of new words, but we're expanding their ability to kind of understand what finances look like, specifically through the lens of looking at it through retirement.
Absolutely. Well, as we jump into this conversation today, remember, you can go to retirees.com. You can join the email list, subscribe now, be the first to know as Victor and the team roll out new tools, planners, and much more. Again, go to retirees.com. So I want to start first, before we get into some of the terminology that we're going to define and explain today. I want to talk about a study that was out there from financial literacy, from the American College of Financial Services. And I think the biggest thing that kind of stuck out to me was that the people that are more literate and have more financial literacy, they're more confident. And having confidence in retirement is kind of where it all begins in terms of fulfillment, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. It doesn't surprise me because, most people are afraid of the things that they don't know. And so kind of going into retirement, if you have a lower literacy level of not just the terms per se, but even how to work with a plan, or where you're going to be getting your money from, like which of these pieces end up fitting into whatever, then I would imagine that you're going to have a much lower sense of confidence about what the future looks like. So it makes a lot of sense to me that the higher literacy people have, the higher degree of confidence they have. And I guess really the question for me would be, how did they achieve that literacy? Because when you go through a process, like people who work with us and have us to help with the retirement planning, a big facet of what we're doing is educating them along the way. We're sort of, educating them to motivate them to take action so they can line things up and have a more successful retirement. So I would say that, Ben, we've probably spent as much time explaining what we're doing as we do actually doing the thing, pushing the button to put the thing in place. That stuff that happens kind of inside the black box is probably a lower percentage of the actual activities that we do, at least when it comes to client facing, and we probably do a lot more explaining things and sometimes re-explaining them as well, because I don't know that literacy is achieved just as kind of one study onto something, and then once you have it, then you have it locked in forever. I always think about this. I kind of think that I'm a decent communicator, right? We've got a podcast. It's a video podcast. I give public seminars. I talk to clients all the time, and I get them to nod, and I feel like I'm really connecting with them. And then I have my dad. And so I was probably trying to work on my dad to get him comfortable making Roth conversions. I began the conversation in January. And over the course of the year, I remember it's June, and I'm standing outside as my youngest is doing goalkeeper training, and I'm on a call fall, going through the Roth conversions again, explaining to him the way that works. And it wasn't until November that I finally connected and got him to take action. And this is an educated man. We've got multiple degrees. We've got a professional career in education. And it took multiple efforts to get him to really get literate about what we were doing with these Roth conversions. And that's a narrow area of the planning that we do. I have to believe that, emphasizing and re-emphasizing, really kind of reinforcing concepts and new ways of thinking is an activity that you have to undertake with regularity. Like, you've got to go in and say, I'm gonna keep hammering at this until I get it. And then what you learn and become really good at is an area that you're going to have a lot of confidence in. So people with that high degree of literacy, especially entering retirement, are going to have a lot more confidence that they're going to be able to navigate their way through and that things are going to be okay.
Americans, they do struggle with unfamiliar topics. And I know that it seems like it can be tough to learn something new, especially as you get older. But there's a very fine line I've found that, once you kind of put in a little bit of time and effort, the ball starts rolling pretty quickly, right? And I think it's probably the same way with financial topics. And sure, the Roth conversion, trying to hammer home that message and explain it might have taken a long time. But I think it kind of like, once it clicks, all of a sudden it's like, okay, wow, this is not that difficult.
Yeah, thank God I didn't have to do that year 2. I mean, everything that I put in with my dad sunk in, and when we went into year 2, it was a much shorter reminder. I think you're right, though, Ben. I think it's a matter of building momentum in an area. So if you have complete ignorance of a particular area, whether it's a financial tool that you're putting in place, or whether it's a kind of planning, or, if I introduce a concept like sequence of returns, if it's your first time coming into that entire area, yeah, you got to put a lot more work coming in. But you take it in bite sizes, you build on a foundation. Part of the reason that, in fact, in our firm, one of the things that we have is an area for people to join that is all of our education, almost like a library that's on demand for them. And the reason to do that is to make sure that they can access that information when they need it and sort of build their own, for lack of a better term, curriculum around that. And that gets them to get the snowball rolling in a direction so now they feel well and in charge. And I guess maybe it's doesn't sound hopeful, but I would say that most of our clients don't complete the initial process feeling 100% like they know everything. I would say it's probably the case that people are there 2-3 years down the road where it starts to click in. The good thing, I think, for the way that we operate is that we never stop investing in that education, right? We never get impatient with it. We never tell you, well, that's enough. We really see ourselves mostly as educators and then implementers secondary. So we keep investing in it for them. But I would say that for the majority of our clients, it's only when they've been with us for a period of time can they now almost teach somebody else. They can be at a grandkids soccer game and talk about where we're getting income from and why that's important in retirement, how they re-engineered their assets. They could probably have a better command on that, but they certainly started at a point where they barely knew anything, and they slowly built it up over time. And so it's sort of like Lego pieces adding onto it till they got the structure that they really felt comfortable. And it's like, okay, I get this now.
Well, as you look through this study, and I encourage you to read it for yourself. It's in the show notes. You can get it from the description. Just click the link and sort through it. A bit of a chicken and egg debate that popped up in my mind when I saw this, that the study highlighted that those with more money and more assets, 1.5 million or more, they scored higher in financial literacy than those with less than 100,000. So which is it, Victor? They learned more that earned the money, right, or they learned about the money as they were earning more? Yeah,
that's a great question, right? It's like, which one came in there? Of course they should know a little bit more about money because they actually have some money. So which one came in there? I don't know where I would put kind of my chips on this roulette table, sort of black versus red, about which came first. But I would say that sometimes your habits have a better chance of getting you to a destination than your knowledge, right? So I think that it's less about the knowledge that you have and more about adopting a system that allows you to get to that point in time. So those people, it could have been the case that they learned about compounding interest when they were 20 and did a thing where they started saving early, and that's a form of financial literacy that got them to large account values. But they also likely relied on a system where decision making was kind of taken out of it. They were doing systematic investing, they were doing withdrawals from their checks, they were automatically dollar cost averaging into a same target date fund. And so I found that those people that lock into that system often are the ones that arrive at having those high account balances. Now, if I fast forward that to when they meet me for retirement planning, and we're talking to them about maybe changing the way their investments are set up, or how are we going to take out income that they're going to need, and how are they going to live the first 10 years, and what about long-term care, I'm probably re-educating them on a brand new topic. And then I think what I have found is the clients that work with us are eager for that education. So maybe the chicken and egg thing is that those people with high enough balances to work with us, those people that are at that level of financial literacy, probably have an appetite to learn. And it's probably something that they've always had, right? It's not something that they've shirked away from because they probably didn't get to this point in time remaining ignorant or remaining sort of not curious about what to do. Now, where they seek that information from, how early, is it good information? Did they have to relearn something different? That probably varies across the board. But the posture of coming in saying, hey, I want to learn something new. I know I don't know it all, and I'm going to keep at this until I get it. Those are probably the highest percentage of the clients that we work with. Like, if I think about our client base, and I think about some of the people that will have to go over what that plan is, and they've got really insightful questions and they want to learn more, we're happy to answer that because we feel confident in anything that they want to ask around our plan, but they come in with that appetite to really understand it. And then the relationship kind of continues where they've delegated the responsibility to that for us, and then we kind of continue down that path for them and get it done.
Another interesting thing that I thought came out of the study was that, and I think we're all aware of this, but the way that they phrase it, saving for retirement is voluntary, I don't think we necessarily think of it that way, right? I think a lot of us kind of feel like retirement's all right? It just will kind of fall into place as we get there. But again, this stresses why it's so important to have this literacy, because it falls on us in order to get to retirement.
Yeah, there was that big change when we moved away from having guaranteed income in the form of pensions or defined benefit plans where you would work your entire life for a company and they would take care of you at the end. When we shifted away from that, where we now relied on 401ks or defined contribution plans, which began in the 1970s, and so most of the people that are retiring now have lived the majority of their working, saving life under that kind of structure. When we made that shift, it's almost like we went to the doctor and we had to become the educated people about what kind of medicine we were going to be taking and what diagnosis we were going to be giving ourselves. And we kind of took the autonomy away, or the responsibility away from the people with the professional degrees to take care of you, and we put it across the lay person to make sure. And everyone kind of left to their own devices. Like, we would give them, the information was there if you wanted to seek it. But we didn't, there isn't a required financial literacy course to graduate from high school. It's not part of the GED. There's no college education that makes it a bare minimum to get out of it that you know about how to do this. These are often thought of as elective courses or something that you would do on the outside. I remember when my kid graduated from high school, my oldest, Aiden, the last 3 weeks of his school was this thing called a Horizons Project. Part of it was sort of an independent study, and so you would kind of link up and learn about another area. But another part of it was just basic living skills. It went from home ec about how to sew something to financial literacy and information about, savings and whatever else. And I thought to myself, we don't do this anymore. We if it wasn't for and it was a short period of time. I'm not sure they walked away with a ton. Thank goodness he's got a financial advisor and a lawyer for dads. He can ask any whatever questions he wants, but we don't do this across the board. And so this idea that saving is voluntary, saving for retirement is voluntary, I probably would turn around and say, real retirement's not guaranteed. You chart your own course through that. And so the more that you get invested in learning about it, taking smart action, checking in on what's going on and making sure that you remain in line with what your goals are and that you're well focused, the better off you're going to be, because tomorrow isn't promised to anybody, and certainly a healthy, comfortable, wealthy retirement isn't promised to anybody at all any longer. And so we're really under our own charge to get that done.
Yeah, and the more proactive you want to be, you can be with the advent of technology and just having so much research at our fingertips. But the study also points out that there is a link between literacy and having that ongoing relationship with an advisor. And I'm sure you can speak to that quite a bit, but it's so true that if you have someone there that you can lean on to learn these things, to hold you accountable, to kind of continue to help you grow in this financial area, it can give you a lot more confidence and, again, less anxiety.
Yeah, and I think that probably one of the things that needs to happen is we need to create almost a base level of literacy, almost like a certification process where we know the base level of what needs to be known. Because you're right, it will change based on advisor, based on who you talk to, like what you should know. And putting ego aside, I feel really comfortable that the stuff that we're teaching is the stuff that everyone should know. It's the important things to know. And I think the difference between having access to all of the information, that Google can answer whatever question you put in there. You put a prompt, it's going to give you a response as soon as you click the I'm feeling lucky button. When you're there, the judgment to know what is right or the judgment to know how to interpret what's in there, that's often what's missing. And I seek that even for myself outside of my professional area. So I work with a trainer when I go to the gym. Is it because I don't know what a bench press is, or I lack some level of literacy around working out? No, I have literacy in that area. But what I gain with working with the trainer is the judgment to know which of those things I should be doing in which order, when I'm falling out of compliance. I tell you, I'm out of form in a way that might injure my old body more often than I care to admit that somebody else is picking up. And I think that the same can be said, sort of an analogy for working with financial advisors, let's say for financial literacy, that you're working with somebody that even if you could go look up all of the terms and learn them on your own, what you gain in that relationship with a professional advisor, specifically one that is focused in retirement and focused in on the thing that you need, has the experience of having guided multiple people through that, dozens or thousands of people down that road, is that you're then able to get an added level of confidence that your literacy has been filtered through a lens that is actually beneficial to you. Because if you went through there and you're like, the 4% withdrawal rule is my financial literacy for generating income, you'd probably be missing out on a lot. And that's what Google would tell you if you went and tried to become financially literate on how to create sustainable withdrawals from your bank account. But then you come and you work with somebody else and say, well, actually, don't think about this like one big bucket, but separate this out into categories like what you need to keep safe for an emergency and what you need to generate for income, and then what you might need for inflation or the time horizons that you have. Now, if I've just raised that level of literacy and I say, okay, now you know that you should withdraw some money and here's the investment strategy, but here's another area that you should really consider so that you feel comfortable that you can make it all the way through retirement and not have to change your grocery shopping habits, that you'll be in a comfortable place throughout. Now you've got a greater degree of confidence because it's being filtered through that lens that says this is the stuff that actually works when you need it.
At Retirees, we believe that retirement is much more than taking care of your finances. The key to true retirement success is addressing things like health and fitness, relationships, community involvement, personal development, and more. Retirees wants to provide you with real steps to reach financial success, so join our mailing list to be the first to receive the tools, insights, and planning guides you need to enjoy a fulfilling retirement.
Very good. Well, let's do our part here for Financial Literacy Month here in April and maybe lay out some explanations and give people a better understanding for some of the key Words, phrases.
Quiz show time.
Yes.
Here we go, Ben.
I know
Let's
you
do
love
this.
it. So I'm going to run down the list, and of course, you, the expert, will explain this for us.
Oh, you don't
All
want to flip it around? I'll ask you the ones how to do that. All right. I'm ready.
I could
ready.
have
Bring
like
it.
the Google, very high level understanding, but I wouldn't be able to apply it to somebody's
the
life.
Chat GPT answers to all of this stuff.
Exactly. All right. How about traditional versus Roth IRA? We hear about it all the time, but again, this is a key part of saving for retirement.
Yeah, most people are familiar with the phrases, but only have experience with one over the other. Most people are saving into their 401ks, which then they can roll over into IRAs. So let's pull it apart. The IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. And so that individual means it's something that you own. The traditional one is that category of assets that you contributed most of the time pre-tax. And then you are growing it and you haven't paid any taxes on it. And then when you take that money out, you're going to have to pay taxes like it was your wage earning. Basically, it's ordinary income taxes. It goes on the same thing as your salary. Now, a Roth IRA account is an account that you have contributed money to that have already paid tax. You either contributed to it while you were working, or you made an election to convert some of your traditional IRA into a Roth, and you paid the tax on that conversion. But the nice thing about that Roth is that the government has now said, not now like today, but when they created it, said that account, it can grow, but we're never going to tax you on those distributions. So those are going to be at 0%. And one of the major differences between the two is that the traditional IRA account is an account that you'll have to start to take money out of as you get older. The ages now are 73 and 75, depending on your birth year. But those are accounts that you have to take money from. Whereas the Roth IRA accounts are one that you never have to take money from. So when you put money in there or it's growing, you are never forced to take anything out until you eventually pass away. The last difference between them is when you inherit this money. So for example, with a traditional IRA, both of these accounts, traditional and Roth, when they're left as an inheritance, let's say to kids, they have to be depleted over 10 years. But there's a difference on the way that they're treated within those 10 years. The traditional IRA has to have at least small amounts come out, and they're taxable when they come out. The Roth IRA, you can actually leave alone, have it continue to grow tax-free for 10 years, and then withdraw it at the last moment. So that's how I think about both of those. We're often in a position, Ben, of seeing clients with large traditional IRA accounts or small to non-existent Roth IRA accounts. And then one of our first planning strategies, one of the things that we look at first is really starting to fill that bucket of tax-free money so that they can use that in the future as they need for inflation hedges, to leave as an inheritance. But we want to kind of almost start to equal out the buckets so that we have money in each one of those. And we find that most people are underinvested or they have less than we would like to see in that Roth IRA account.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown, and I think the inherited IRA aspect of that makes it even more powerful, right, for planning.
It does. One of the things that comes from that, Ben, is that people who are making those conversions, let's say later in life, sometimes they'll say, well, when am I ever going to see the benefit from it? Or does that mean that there's a date somewhere in the future where this mechanically works out to my advantage in terms of the taxes? And I said, well, listen, if you were planning on leaving this behind to somebody and you were to die tomorrow, the work that we've done today will actually benefit them because they're going to get 10 years of that tax-free growth in this Roth IRA that they don't have to touch and grows tax-free. And when they finally take it out, they can just take out that amount, never give the federal or state government any money. So that inheritance aspect has often really opened people's eyes to engaging with this kind of strategy because it's a benefit not just for them, not just for their spouse, but also for the kids down the line.
Again, that's the importance of literacy, right? All right. What about
perfect
retirement annuity? This is one I wouldn't be able to explain to you.
Yeah, it's just funny because I look at that phrase, retirement annuity, and I say to myself, I'm not sure what that means. Because the word retirement often kind of has legs in multiple tax brackets or tax classifications. So, for example, when we think about retirement, people can think about their 401k as their retirement account. But they can also think of a brokerage account as their retirement account. And so a retirement annuity, for me, if I were to try to pull that apart as a definition, I would say, well, it's an annuity that you buy in retirement that is meant to help you in retirement. Well, what does that mean? Well, it really depends, because annuity has become one of these products and terms that has grown and broadened its definition. There was a yesteryear annuity that people were familiar with, and it was the kind that you would give your money to an insurance company. They would start paying you income, but if you died the next day, the insurance company kept everything else. And so people still hold on to that definition, not realizing like Webster has updated that in this world, because now the annuity has a definition that includes savings account, something like a long-term CD. They've got an account that might look to grow, or you might leave as a death benefit plan. You have ones that are created for income in retirement, but you don't run the risk that if you die early, they keep the extra money, they will return that to your beneficiaries. So the moment we start to see two words that can have such a varied meaning, that retirement can be from different kinds of accounts, that annuity can be different kinds of products along the way, it's really hard to define that. And I think maybe the lesson from this, for listeners, is to say, don't presume that you know what it means simply because you're carrying a definition from some other place. These days, especially things like annuities, have taken on a new flavor for how they're defined. And, in our firm, we can work with all of the investments, any of them. Some advisors are only licensed to do one thing or another. We have money in FDIC insured accounts that we help people manage. We do annuities. We do stuff in the Wall Street account. It's all there. So that allows us to really just pick what's best for the client. And so when we think about the word annuity, while some people react in a way, it's like, oh, I don't want that, we are less judgmental about it. There are actually things that work great there. We just have to agree on what that definition of annuity is, or at least say it can live in a couple of different places, including one that actually might be really beneficial for you.
All right, another one on our list, after-tax accounts. I mean, people will probably see, and it gets confusing sometimes, is this pre-tax, post-tax, after-tax? What does it all mean, Victor?
Yeah, and after-tax just means anything that's after the tax. So here's the thing that gets confusing. I know what most people mean when they write this. Most people mean a brokerage account, to be clear, your checking and savings account is an after-tax account.
Okay.
Right? You got your salary, you pay taxes on your salary, you put the stuff in an account, that's an after-tax account. But most people mean an investment account. So account at Vanguard or Schwab or something like that, where they contributed some extra savings and they have it working for them with some investments. But an after-tax account is also defined as a Roth IRA. That money went in there after taxes, and it's growing after taxes. It's a form of an after-tax account. So here's another one that can get a little bit confusing because it means different things to different people, or strictly speaking, it actually does mean different things, but we have to agree that most of the time, we have to have an agreement we're talking about that what we mean is that brokerage account, because that's the one that we're talking about, and that has all kinds of flavors and different elements to it. And for example, the after-tax account is one that gets a step up in basis when you die. The one that we're talking about, the brokerage account, that's the one that we might pay capital gains taxes if we've held on to something for a year, so it might get a different tax treatment. It's that kind of thing that we're thinking about. So we need to really agree on the definition, because every dollar has to got a job, so we're talking about what it means for what we need it for. So we have to agree that we're talking about the same thing.
Right, applying the context to the conversation for sure.
For sure.
All right, let's lump the next two together because I think they kind of go hand in hand. Mutual funds and ETFs, both investment products that we consider and we hear a lot about, but what's the difference?
Yeah, and I think not recent in the last year, but I say probably in the last 10 years, I think the prevalence of ETFs has really started to keep pace with mutual funds. It's kind of interesting because we probably had a 10 to 15 year period where people were learning about mutual funds and learning the definition of them, and it became, the switch where instead of holding on to individual stocks, they now held on to mutual funds. More and more recently, though, people wanted something that didn't carry a lot of fees with it, because that was one of the big knocks against mutual funds, is there was this basket of securities. Instead of holding individual stocks, you would go in and give your money to a mutual fund manager, and they would take your money along with other people's money and buy lots of stocks. Sometimes they did it by sector, like technology and healthcare. Sometimes they did it by index, like the S&P 500, and so they would represent that. but they would carry these fees. So what they did is started to create these exchange traded funds, or ETFs. The nice thing is that they trade like stocks. So they have a low overhead, low fees, usually no transaction fees to buy and sell, and they kind of represent what mutual funds represented, which was a basket of securities. So they would often have an ETF that follows the S&P 500 or an ETF that's for emerging markets. I'll tell you, to this day, Ben, we still use both. We use a lot of ETFs in the composition of our portfolio, and we use some mutual funds. Sometimes they work out better to have one over the other. What's most important about the ones that we select, and what's most important for people to know, is that they're not all made the same. And you are not necessarily, you can find a great mutual fund that follows the S&P 500, and that could be low cost, well run, great allocation. But you can also find one that is expensive. You can do the same thing with ETFs. You can have ones that are managed in a way that are, following an index, and you can have ones that are managed that just blindly trade things, and it was not as good. So it really requires a more expert's eye to select the ones that are going to benefit you, but they are really good tools. They exist. People still should be using them as part of the overall portfolio. That element that's going to be in the Wall Street world, I always advise the diversification that you can get by owning a lot of securities rather than a single stock. So either one of them have got roles in there. It's just that they're composed and traded a little bit differently. I call the ETF sort of the modern mutual fund, in the fact that it's more recent and tends to be the hotter selection of a way to kind of get into multiple securities.
All right, very good information. Let's close it out with one more, Victor, the gift tax. How does this apply?
Good. I like this one. Now I get to put the legal hat on with the financial, like kind of both sides of that
Using
going
all your
forward.
skills today, yeah.
So federal government and IRS, in their ultimate wisdom, has decided it's okay for you to give money to other people. It's your money, but they're going to let you know that it's okay to let you give some of that money. But here's the thing. They don't want you to give too much of it, because the truth is that they've put some laws in place that say if you give too much over your lifetime, or if you give too much when you die, they'd like a piece of that. Now, the good news is that too much in the year 2024 is $28 million. So we got a lot of room in there, right? But they also have limits about how much you can give before you have to let them know. Kind of like when you're going out to play. If you're just going to go out for 5 minutes and come back, your mom doesn't need to know. But if you're going to be going out for the rest of the day, your mom needs to know about it. So there is a threshold that you have to report when you do more than this. So the gift tax reporting threshold, or what they call the annual exclusion amount, is $18,000 this year. You can give $18,000 to as many single individuals as you would like, and you don't have to tell the IRS about it. But the moment that you give more than $18,000, you got to file an annual return. Form 709. Just got to let them know that you had it. Now, I'm finally getting to your word, because you said gift tax, and I haven't defined that yet. I've just been leading up to it. So here's the gift tax. If over the course of your life, in all of the stuff that you've gifted and have to report to gift, you go over, I said $28 million, that's for couples, it's about $14 million for individuals. If you go over the $14 million mark, you now owe gift tax on that next gift going forward. So this is a good point of clarification, because a lot of people remember the low number. They'll remember 10,000, 15,000. Sometimes they're behind the times. Now it's 18,000. They'll know the low number. And what they'll think is, when I give more than 18,000, I owe a gift tax. That's not true. They give over that amount, they just got to let the IRS know about it. And as long as they don't plan to give more than $14 million either while they're alive or when they die, they're not going to owe any taxes on that. They just have to report it.
Okay, that is a good to know. I actually thought it was the latter. I thought you actually had to pay the tax when you went above and beyond. Not that I'm dishing out those kind of gifts right now, but that's was my understanding.
Well, I was waiting for that check, Ben. You didn't give me the check for $18,500?
I thought I had a ride by
for that
now.
check.
I'll have to double check, make sure they got the right address. Let's close it out with this thought, Victor, because literacy, again, very important. It correlates with your confidence and your lack of anxiety in retirement. But The other part that's important is retirement is there's not a template for it, right? We can't just hand over and say, all right, here you go, Victor, follow this list and you'll be good to go. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know what steps to take, and you know what, all these tools we talked about today, how to best utilize them for yourself.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the relationship that I developed with my dad during my formative years, where as I was growing into adulthood, he became the resource for me about how to do something around the house. When I had my first apartment, when I had my first house, how do I handle X, Y, or Z, and I'd be able to pick up the phone? Because the truth is, he could have provided me with all of the knowledge on the tools that he might be leaving me with, but there were problems that were going to come up. And they're problems that he's seen before, and he knows how to handle, but I've never seen them before. And so if we think about that like the retirement template analogy, it'd be the same thing as if you put together an initial plan for your retirement and just said, follow this. But you didn't have somebody that you could pick up the phone and reach out to say, something's a little bit different. We're planning to move to North Carolina. How does that affect the plan? We want to support one of our grandchildren that has this endeavor, whatever that looks like. How does that change what we need? What's the best way to make that gift over $18,000 to that family that we want to do? All of those things come in. And so what the benefit of a relationship is that there's always a bat phone you can pick up when there's something wrong in Gotham and you got to figure out how to get Batman there. You can always pick up that phone to have that conversation, to leverage on the experience of an advisor like myself that has been walking people through that for a couple of decades now. And when we get to that situation, we can say, we've actually been down that path before. Just like my dad has told me, I know how to fix that knocking sound that you're getting in your car. I just had that happen with the timing belt. I held up the phone. I said, what is this sound? He says, it's the timing belt. You're at 80,000 miles. Aren't you? Time to change it. It's to be the same thing. Somebody comes in and said, this is what I'm facing with these higher taxes and Medicare premiums. How do I fix that? I can look at it and go, I've done that before. We can help you fix that. And so making sure that you're in a relationship with somebody that can provide that for you, it will help you have an easier path through retirement so you can go lead a great life. And you're not worried about what that impact is going to look like one day over another, that you have that handled. And I think that's just as important as base level literacy is to have the access to the dictionary for the rest of the definitions that you might need at any point in time. And that's where that relationship comes in.
Well, the good news is I have the phone number for the bat phone. If you wanted to say 56506-8300, but also log on to retirees.com, drop your email in, sign up for all the resources that Victor and his team will be providing soon. You'll be the first to get access to those as well. So, Victor, thanks for your time today. Happy Financial Literacy Month. Enjoy the rest of it, your big celebrations I know that you have planned, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You got it, Ben. We're going to go party now.
Palante Wealth Advisors are an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Medina Law Group is an independent estate planning and elder law firm. Investment advisory services offered through Palante Wealth Advisors, LLC in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet a particular need of an individual situation. Medina Law Group and Palante Wealth Advisors are not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Medina Law Group and Palante Wealth Advisors.